Hi guys, welcome to Basement Supercar Build, the channel where we see if an average guy like me can design and build his own mid-engine car. This video will be a highlights video of the work that was finished this week. If you want to see the actual work take place, watch the full-length video for this week. And with that out of the way, let's get started on this week's video.
I want to show you guys what I'm working on here. This is the lines running through the tunnel, and this is all of the lines except for there's one line missing for the clutch master cylinder that I know of. There may be another one or two things go through this tunnel, but for right now that's all I know of. And to show you, the lines come, got some air conditioner lines from the left side, water lines from the center. This is a vacuum line, and power steering lines from the right hand side. We'll make a clamp to pull this all the way over against this tank just to make sure it doesn't bump that pulley here and belt here. These lines come around through this tunnel. I've got hot water here over by itself, cold AC lines over against this wall by themselves, and then power steering and vacuum running through the center. And everything is neatly spaced. Runs up through here. Tubes start separating. I've got a bracket up here with fingers to sort these tubes out. I'm going to weld that to the frame, and there's holes drilled for zip ties to hold everything down in those fingers. And then everything in the front starts separating and running to this designated area. Two power steering lines come here, run up to the attach here on the steering rack. This is the one clutch master cylinder line. It'll have to be spliced once I know how long and exactly what end goes on it. I have the one vacuum line here running to the brake booster, and the two air conditioner lines. One comes up here to this 90. Smooth transition up to that 90. The other one right now I've just got running forward to here. It's just looped in and laying here until I know exactly where the radiator and the air conditioner condenser are going to mount over here in front of this tire. And then I'll work out the routing on the rest of that hose, and still needs an end on it once I cut the hose to length. But that's what I have. Everything's kind of neat and clean for the most part. I'm pretty happy with it. It's all going to be hidden anyway once the car's finished, but still wanted it neat. And that's what it looks like. So I guess the next thing I'm going to do is weld that finger bracket down to the frame, and I think this part of the car, at least for now, will be complete. Well, I finished welding this little bracket with the fingers in place, and I've got the hoses rerouted, and I like how this looks. It keeps everything kind of neat and spaced correctly. And there's a lot more work to do up here, but it'll come later. And I've been looking at places to put some of these fuse boxes for the wiring harness and the battery, and I'm just trying to get a general idea where I'm going to put everything. I was hoping to mount the battery here in the front of the car, and I may still do that, but if I do, I'm going to have to run some heavy gauge power wires to the rear of the car, because I'm thinking that these fuse boxes and ECM for the engine and everything are probably going to have to go in the rear of the car. I was looking at placing them here or up inside of here. You'd have to remove the rear tire to access them in the inner fender wheel, and they're really close to the engine and exhaust. I'm worried about the heat. The factory C7 Corvette has a couple of these components here in the rear of the car under a deck cover. I was looking at that also. Haven't ruled that out yet, but I was also thinking here in this area, the roof of the car is going to come up, know, I don't know, roughly this high, so that gives me 2.5 feet of area. That there would be a bulkhead here because there's a window in the center across, but it's not on these two sides. So it gives me two sides with a good sized bulkhead to mount these components. Gets them further away from the exhaust and the engine over in a sectioned off cooler area that I could actually duct some air through and help cool also. And actually I think I like that as much or more than anything else that I've looked at so far. That would still give me room to maybe put the battery here in one of these lower sections on either side. It wouldn't be too bad to remove the rear tire and an inner fender well cover or an access cover in that fender well to service or replace a battery. But for weight distribution purposes, I'd like to keep that battery in the front of the car. So that's something else I've got to consider and work out. The wiring harness, of course, is going to be a nightmare once I figure out what I'm keeping and what I'm taking out of this harness. I'll have to cut the main runs of these cables here, like somewhere in this area. Some of them will have to be shorter, some of them will have to be lengthened. I'll have to splice all that in. That's going to be a tremendous amount of work. Not quite sure if I need to start planning on some of this and work on it or wait until the car's further along. I'd really like to have this, the engine side of it, which is one of the fuse boxes and wiring harnesses. I'd kind of like to have that wired separately so I'd be able to run the engine sometime in the near future. But not sure that that's possible with a stock wiring harness. May have to go with an aftermarket engine controlling harness. And if I do that, I'm not sure how that's going to interact with the wiring harness for the instruments and the instrument gauges themselves. So a lot of things to think about and do some research on and learn. But just trying to plan ahead and have a general idea at least where I'm going to put these components so I don't paint myself into too many corners. I know it's bound to happen somewhere, but I'd like to limit those areas as much as possible. But anyway, that's all I have for now. I received the second fuse box in today for the car. This is the fuse box that hooks to the wiring harness for the engine and for the instrument panel. You can see on the back side here I have 3 of the plugs plugged in here for the engine. This one doesn't get a plug, it's just an empty space. And these 2 that are missing is where the instrument panel wiring harness plug into. I was just evaluating what connectors go where and how these interact with each other. I don't think I mentioned before, I'm thinking about putting these in the back of the car. I'm still considering that. And I'm looking at possibly moving the battery to the rear of the car because it just doesn't make any sense to have it in the front of the car and have all the battery cables coming to the rear to these fuse boxes and to the rear to the starter and to the alternator. It's going to be a lot of large size, large diameter wiring running from the rear of the car to the front of the car to access the battery. I'm thinking possibly putting the battery here in this area. It's in close proximity to the engine and the exhaust manifolds. Also, I'm not sure. No, batteries don't like extreme heat or cold. Not sure if this qualifies as extreme heat. I'm going to go online and see if I can see where the stock battery is in the Corvette and how close it is to the motor and exhaust manifolds. I know it can't be too far away, but I'm sure it's further than this. I may have to put some kind of a cooling duct here to blow some fresh cold air on this battery to keep it cool. But I'm running out of places to put the battery. If it can go here, this makes easy access. It's close to both fuse boxes. I think I'll have to mount one fuse box on each side of the car, one here and one over here. That's just 2 short power wires to supply power to both fuse boxes. I am right beside of the alternator, so that makes that part easy. Just not quite sure. I want to keep the battery low. I don't want it up on top. I want it as low to the ground as possible. I was looking on the front of the car, but the area here where I was hoping to mount a battery is just, it's really getting small and tight. It's not impossible, but because of having to have so many power wires running through the car, the tunnel of the car, back and forth, I just don't think it's feasible to do that. So this is what I'm doing. I'm looking at this. I'll do some investigating. If anyone has any comments about the battery being this close to the exhaust manifolds, let me know. I think a cool air duct bringing some air into this area would help tremendously, and I need some air intakes anyway to funnel air through and around this engine and out the rear of the car, just to keep it cool. So I'm going to start playing with some of these fuse boxes and wiring harnesses and just laying them out and taking a look. I'm going to have to start soon going through these harnesses, figuring out which wires I need to eliminate, which connectors and wires, which circuits I need to completely eliminate, I'm not going to use, which wires I'm going to have to shorten, which wires I'm going to have to lengthen, and just try to get a game plan on that. That's probably going to be a few weeks work just doing that. It's probably going to be kind of boring seeing me sitting here thinking and looking, but I'll film some of it, maybe not all of it, but once I get a game plan together, I'll try to film some of the wiring harness adjustments that I do, shortening wires, lengthening wires, soldering, crimping, whatever I do. I'll try to film some of that so you can see what took place, but I may not film it all because it'd probably get boring. But I'm gonna get started looking at some of these layouts and try to get a game plan together.